How do you find a good meditation teacher or teachers? Well, one way to consider this is to think about different kinds of teachers. I have in my own mind a kind of map, a classification system for teaching. Actually, I don't really think so much in terms of teachers. I don't think so much in terms of the noun, teacher. I think more in terms of the verb, teaching. There is an activity called teaching. Broadly, I classify the activity of teaching under three headings. There is subtle teaching, there is descriptive teaching, and then there is explicit teaching. From my perspective, everyone who does a spiritual practice or a meditative practice is a teacher in that they teach. But they may only teach at the subtle level. So what does it mean to teach at the subtle level? Well, two things. As the result of doing the practice, we change. Our vibe changes, how we carry ourselves moment by moment. Our body odors probably change. Our pheromones change. Things about us change, and that shows. Perhaps only at a subtle level. It shows in body language. As I say, it may show in odors, subtle cues, how we breathe, how our eyes look here or there, and so forth. Changes take place within us as the result of this practice. People can detect those changes, perhaps consciously or perhaps below the threshold of awareness. And that puts out a subtle teaching. You could be talking about anything, you could be doing anything, but you're coming from a certain place. As the result of your practice, you're subtly teaching with every action you do, every syllable you utter. Even people who haven't done much meditation, the change has already started to happen. So that's one aspect of subtle teaching. Another aspect of subtle teaching is more large scale. Our behaviors improve, or they should. If they're not, then there's a problem. And people that know us see the behaviors improving. And that's impressive to people. Very impressive, actually. And that makes them interested, sympathetic, maybe wanting to do that path or that practice themselves. So the behavior changes that take place with time, coupled with the sort of vibe changes, so we say energy changes that take place. To me, this constitutes teaching. Therefore, every practitioner is automatically a subtle teacher. Then there's descriptive teaching. What descriptive teaching means is you have a practice, somebody asks you to describe your practice, and you can do so coherently. Coherently means there's clear vocabulary, well-formulated sentences. It all hangs together logically. That's what cohere means. You can give a coherent description of what you do in words that the average person can understand. I call that the descriptive level of teaching. I have a little phrase that I use, which is, what is coherent is cogent. Cogent means compelling. It means, oh, that makes sense, and I see the point. Maybe I'd like to do it myself. So but you're not telling them to do it, you're not proselytizing, you're not giving them a practice and explicitly teaching them, you're just describing, hey, this is what I do. When I have physical discomfort, I do this, and it has this effect. When I have emotional challenges, I do this, and it has this effect. When I do formal practice, I do this, and sometimes this happens, and sometimes that happens. You're giving a coherent description of your practice. Well, that's a teaching. And that's a level of teaching. So any of you that have a practice and can coherently describe it to people in words, average people, people that don't have a practice, then I say you're a teacher. at that level of teaching. Then there's explicit teaching. Explicit teaching is you are running a meditation class, or you're privately tutoring someone, and you are giving them techniques, you're answering their questions, you're giving them detailed guidance, you're monitoring their progress, and so forth. You're explicitly now a teacher. Some people evolve to a place in their practice where they would like to be an explicit teacher, and that's good. Usually you need some sort of training for that, although not inevitably. Tell you the truth, when I moved from being a descriptive teacher to an explicit teacher, I myself did not have any training to do that. I just started to experiment and see what worked. Maybe that's not the best scenario, but that's what I did, and it just evolved with time. Among explicit teachers, I would say that there are various subcategories. There are paraprofessional teachers. That is to say teachers that teach part-time. In my organization, we call them facilitators. I've trained many people to be facilitators. They can help out at retreats, they can answer questions, and so forth. They're sort of like a paramedic. They're a paraprofessional. Then there are professional teachers. A professional teacher teaches full-time. Someone like me. They derive their livelihood that way. Among full-time teachers, there's a class of full-time teachers that are capable of dealing with classical enlightenment. When it starts to happen to people, they can handle that phenomenon. They can handle the pathologies that may occur occasionally that can accompany classical enlightenment. Occasionally. Don't get all freaked out. It doesn't happen that often. So we might call them masters. People that aren't afraid of the E word, enlightenment. So if you can find a teacher in that category that you can relate to, then that's good. It doesn't have to be one, though. You might find several teachers in that category that you can relate to. If you can't find a teacher in that category who is comfortable with handling the enlightenment issue, then okay, just find a professional teacher, somebody that's, does this, is established. If you can't find that, a paraprofessional. If you can't find that, then a descriptive teacher. If you can't find that, then just someone that teaches at the subtle level, would be my general recommendations as far as sort of how to think about teachers.